Former President Trump's impeachment trial starts tomorrow. His defense team is urging the Senate to dismiss the case, calling it a brazen political act. But even if the Senate does vote on whether to dismiss the case, it's unlikely that would meet with success, with the Senate tied at 50-50. NTD's Melina Weiskup explains what we can expect this week as the trial unfolds.
Just one day before the trial is set to start, Trump's lawyers sent a brief detailing their own argument against the impeachment trial. Trump's defense team and even a majority of the Senate Republicans agree that it holds no constitutional basis. Now, Trump's lawyers are calling the trial a political act, saying their argument is a false narrative propped up by biased and mischaracterized media reports.
And I do agree with Trump's defense here. All they're doing is pulling from leftist media, and then they use that as fact. We're living in an era where, and I think this is a very dangerous thing and an important point, where an accusation is treated as fact.
For example, the Democrats argue that Trump's words urging protesters to fight much harder and to show strength incited violence. Now, what's missing here and what Trump's defense team plans to argue is that Trump also told the group he expects they'll march to the Capitol building peacefully. Meckler's practiced law for 2 decades and says there is no basis for the argument that Trump's words incited violence. That's because the legal standard for incitement requires an immediate connection between Trump's words and the violence.
We have very expansive free speech rights protected by the First Amendment. By the way, not granted by the First Amendment. I think this is really important to note. We were endowed by our Creator with the right to speak freely, to have freedom of conscience, freedom of religion. Not something that government grants. It's something that government should not intrude upon. And so we should be careful of any government intrusion.
And Trump's defense team, arguing along the same lines, accuses the Democratic Party of seeking to, quote, carve out a mechanism by which they can silence a political opponent in a minority party.
Well, if the president's language is incitement, then I have to say that almost every single major elected Democrat in the United States Congress, at least anyone that was doing any media during the Black Lives Matter riots, they were actually much closer to inciting violence. They were telling us that when cities were burning, we needed to understand why people were doing this. We actually had Democratic people in cities, at one point the mayor of Baltimore saying we need to make room for people who wanted to destroy things. So
another argument Trump's defense makes is that the FBI confirmed the violence was planned several days in advance. So these are some of the topics we expect to be brought up throughout this trial. They'll start tomorrow with around 4 hours of debate, and then the Senate will vote over its constitutionality. Opening arguments are set to start Wednesday at noon, and House impeachment managers and Trump's legal team will get 16 hours to present their cases. So that's what we expect to see in the following days as we follow this trial.